right. So greetings and salutations. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you happen to be. Welcome to today's Unity Mobile webinar. I'm Richard Morvetz, Unity Mobile's Marketing Manager, along with Kamila Amirova, Unity Mobile's Service Delivery Program Manager. As well, we have a very special guest presenter today, Tobias Keller, Head of Strategy, Marketing, and Business Development from Ericsson. And how are we today, Kamila? How are we today, Tobias?
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Very happy joining from Prague.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, again, thanks very much for joining today. Today we'll be discussing on the topic of the growth of mobile broadband, the ecosystem around it, monetization, future development and trends. And at the very end, we'll even recap a little bit on how to position your company to benefit from the mobile momentum. Now, just a quick note that Unity Mobile will continue having a series of webinars covering a wide range of topics, from how to easily create, manage, and publish mobile websites to the marketing of your website. So if you're interested, you can register for these webinars on Unity Mobile's website. Also, if you have any ideas for webinars and you want to propose a topic, feel free to drop an email at info@unitymobile.com, and we could certainly consider any webinar topics that you'd like to propose. Now, as I said, right off the top, we have a special guest, Tobias Keller. Tobias, perhaps I'll just give a quick little background and your past experience. Some of your background, as I have here, 10 years of telecom strategy consulting experience in the EU and United States, 4+ years of corporate strategy and marketing director at Telefonica O2. And since 2012, since this year, now the head of strategy, marketing, and business development at Ericsson with a focus on Europe. So thanks again, Tobias, for joining us today. As I pass over the microphone and the presentation over to you, Tobias, there's some many exciting trends and developments. Can you perhaps just give us a little insights in what we'll be seeing today?
Yes, of course. I think it's an overall trend navigator, as we call it at Ericsson, about where the overall telco and mobile broadband industry will develop. Just to reconfirm, do I have the presentation now on?
Just a second, Tobias, let me activate it for you. So right now, yes, we have an access to your screen. We see it, and I think, Richard, you can confirm as well if you see it clearly. Richard?
Absolutely. Yep.
Excellent. So everything is on your hands, Tobias. Now you are king.
Thank you very much, Richard and Camilla. So I looked at the telco industry, where it stands today, where it is likely to develop with a blend, as Richard said, of experience having worked for application developers, having worked for operators, having worked in strategy consulting across 2 to 3 continents, and lately working for Ericsson as a supplier. So I feel very lucky that I have a multi-dimensional view over the years, and I'd like to share with you how this exciting industry is, I think, going to develop. Where do we stand today, and how is it going to go? In a nutshell, just 1 second. What we believe what will be tomorrow's operator realities is that, looking back, we went from fixed line 1 billion places connected to 7 billion people connected. We will be there in a couple of years, but now we are moving to 15 billion screens connected. This is multi-device reality that is happening now. And we will eventually move to 50 billion things connected via connected devices and machine to machine. This means that we will have 2.5 billion more subscription in the next 4 years. The traffic will go up by 100%. And actually the good news for, let's say, the telecom industry overall is that the revenues will go up. This may be a surprise for US or Europe central view, but if you look at it from a worldwide view, via voice and SMS services that are actually decreasing, but we will have data and cloud services which will actually more than fill the gap. And there's a lot of development potential in the developed world. So the revenues will go up for a worldwide portfolio. From a network point of view, one has to say that there will not be any service development, any revenue development, if you don't provide mobile broadband coverage, very good capacity, and very high quality. And high quality means faster and faster download speeds and upload speeds, and importantly also lower latency, meaning faster reaction time. In terms of networks, this means that actually the coverage worldwide will increase, even in GSM, which is 2G, mainly in rural areas in the third world. We will, apart from the United States, where we have very good WCDMA coverage, 3G coverage, we will see a lot of rollout of 3G coverage, and we are now starting to see LTE, mainly in the United States and in parts of Asia, but we are going to see in the next 2 to 3 years in Europe, but also in parts of the developing world, that LTE will actually significantly increase. In 2016, we will have state-of-the-art population coverage across the world of something like 30%. This will be reflected in mobile broadband uptake. We go from something like 800 million subscriptions in 2011 to close to 5 billion. One thing that is very important to note is it will be smartphones which are driving the growth. It will not be tablets or dongles, which is a very good thing for operators, but also for networks, because dongles tend to congest the network. We will also see a revival of the importance of network quality. That mattered back in 2000, 2002 in 2G. It kind of got lost in 3G because nobody was really using the capabilities of 3G. But now, coverage, capacity, and quality, meaning download speed, upload speed, and latency, will really matter for customer satisfaction. In this context, what are actually the trends that we are seeing in terms of smartphone uptake? Globally, not a big development. 10% of consumers have smartphones. The US is leading. AT&T, but also Verizon and Sprint, more than half of US citizens currently have a smartphone. This gives us an indication where the rest of the world is heading. Europe first and Asia, but then also the rest of the world. Smartphones will be key to the development of mobile broadband. But there are other things that will be key to the development of mobile broadband in the next 2 years. And I just, summed it up here, looking at the different players. In terms of ecosystem, what do we see in the next, this year, but in the next 2 years? There's really an ecosystem power battle for the best possible position to monetize. We see that the new OTT players are finally successfully monetizing. Not everybody, but players such as WhatsApp, Skype, Viber, or Fring. And also we see that those players are much more agile than telco network operators to innovate, but also to bring things to the market. In terms of customers, the humans, we see that they are adopting mobile much faster than any technology before. We see very high penetration, hence future growth coming from developing world, but also from connected devices, machine to machine. We see that the consumer is moving from being a passive receiver to becoming a broadcaster. You see that by broadcasting yourself on YouTube, by participating in shows such as Big Brother, or who wants to be a millionaire, or Pop Idol, or X Factor. People want to show themselves to the world, and mobile broadband is key to that. Ease of use will be key to adoption. So if you want to bring something to the market, make it as easy as possible for the user intuitively to understand and to start using it. Apple is a good example who got it right. In Europe and in some other downturn economies, we see that actually consumers are optimizing spend in recession, which is currently leading to a decreasing revenue pool for operators. The United States is slightly ahead. There is actually expanding of revenues. We also see in the context of new devices, new applications, that there is increasing bandwidth and capacity needs. In fact, there is an explosion of the need for bandwidth and capacity. On the device side, we have a rise of new connected devices, tablets, consoles, TVs, e-books. We have, as we said before, an inflection point which has already passed in the United States and in parts of Europe and in parts of Asia, where smartphones are driving the mobile data growth, no longer dongles. Very interestingly, Apple is only player on the device side who's really monetizing. There's only one other player who's making money, which is Samsung, but Apple, out of something like 10% of the volume, they're making 80% of the profits of that part of the industry value chain. And as I said before, communication is not just connecting 1 billion places and 7 billion people, but we will see that more than 10 billion screens and much more than 20 billion things will be connected. On the operator and application side, also important players in the value chain, operators are in many parts of the world fighting with a decreasing revenue pool due to consumers optimizing spend in recession. And we see that they're increasingly valued as utilities, and they are now focusing on EBITDA and cash flow growth. It's a spiral that I only see Asian and American operators going out of in the next year, where they actually see that where I see that there is a revenue increase. European, some African, South American operators are very much focusing on streamlining right now. Also, operators have traditionally played the trading for share game, meaning they wanted to grow by getting more market share. Now in a saturated market, this will only lead to so far in a lot of European markets, South American markets, we have actually seen that this is destroying market value. So operator boards, and I'm saying that to a lot of operator boards that I meet, they need to start thinking about the future strategy. Do you want to continue growing by market share, or do you want to become the EasyJet or Southwest Airlines, hope I got that right, of the telco industry and via streamlining, or do you want to do it like some Asian players, namely from South Korea and Hong Kong, to really innovate in terms of new business models and in terms of new customer experiences? And a lot of downstream decisions will be aligned to this overall future strategy. It's often not clear. Operator boards have to go through that thinking process. On the application side, we see what I call the distributed cloud 3.0. We will come to that a bit later. And we see increasing importance of applications, application stores, applications as control points, and so on and so forth. Interestingly enough, for American participants, RIM is on a downward spiral for many reasons, but notably one reason is that they never really got it right on applications compared to, let's say, Android operating systems. On the network side, we see, as I said, arrival of low latency, high-speed LTE. Circle switch voice is going to be disbanded. We see the arrival of 2 Chinese vendors, which are actually creating loss-leading reference cases in relatively small markets to grow further in bigger markets. And we see a future big player, or a past big player, Nokia Siemens Networks, who's continuously restructuring. So the network side is in turmoil. Ericsson continues as the leader on this side. On the regulatory side, regulators are learning from past mistakes where they were monetizing spectrum and not leaving any capex to operators for rollout. They are now balancing spectrum monetization with leaving enough capex for fast countrywide network rollout. We see that in the United States, finally the digital divide is bridged by some operators. We will see that in Europe, and we will see that in Asia. Particularly in Europe, there is a push for further MTR decrease towards 0, that's mobile termination rate. And there's an interesting development that the first time some regulators actually allow consolidation in low-priced markets. They said, we went too far. Operators are not making money. The industry is not making money. We need to allow consolidations. However, in high-priced markets, notably some Eastern European markets, but also some Central American markets, they're pushing new entrants to further competition. So a lot of exciting trends. and battles. So what are the battles that I see in the industry? The first, number one, is mobile voice over IP. You see really an explosion in mobile voice over IP users, for example, via Viber. Skype will soon offer it on a big scale as well. And this is really driven by the share of smartphones, and it's threatening the highly profitable mobile voice revenues. So the operators still need to find a way to to act on this. This will require new types of cooperation outside of their current sphere of influence. This will be very interesting to watch. Then we see soft SIM MVNO, where actually Apple or another OS device manufacturer could offer soft SIM subscription through online stores and actually effectively internationally operate as an MVNO. Very disruptive model. Again, could reduce operators to BitPipe. But there are ways to deal with that. Could be an additional webinar to go into. Mobile data monetization. This is really the panacea of revenue growth, mainly via mobile advertising targeted to behaviors, browsing patterns, or via application stores. It's an exciting growth area. As I said before, a lot of players are moving much faster than operators, and operators yet have to find a way to monetize growth in the mobile data history that resides in their network. One of the issues that we see is legislation, where in Europe, but also in other parts of the world, regulators are not clear on what what operators can actually use in terms of data for advertising purposes. Fourth one is video over the top. Is again a growth area, but enabled by high bandwidth and players like Netflix. So there's a real potential to change the pay TV industry. The TV may be dead in 10 years because we only have video on the top, video over the top, and this is really creating opportunities, but also some threats for established players. And finally, cloud and web centricity. We're increasingly moving to an environment where what you're using on your laptop or your PC will no longer reside on your laptop or PC. And essentially, the cloud is about having every application centralized in some central service or data storage systems and just download via streaming whatever you need. This enables new business models for companies, for private users, for all part of the value chain. It's a potential to reduce actually the dominance of Apple via kind of competing ecosystems. But, and this may be interesting for some of the listeners, there are real opportunities for new hero developers and the next big thing that is hitting NASDAQ that could be developed as we speak. What are the driving forces of change? At the end of the day, it's really the availability of high-end smartphones, 4G enabled, high-end networks that give you a great customer experience, and cloud-based ecosystem. The cloud-based ecosystem is coming into play, or it's coming into place. It will still take 1 or 2 years in parts of the world. Smartphones, you have a good range now, but prices are still quite high. And the networks, as we saw, they are being rolled out. There are more and more operators investing in cloud. It's really going up in terms of business investment, and we see also then in terms of business opportunity. In a nutshell, without going into too much detail, 2011 there were $22 billion invested by operators worldwide in cloud. This is doubling to 2013 next year. If we see, it's a complicated chart, but just some key takeaways. The investment was mainly by North America, with Asia Pacific behind a second, and Europe, the traditional powerhouse, being really behind. If I highlight, where it's going to go, Verizon spent $2 billion in 2011, AT&T $1 billion on cloud-based technology or acquisition. China Mobile, the most valued or the highest valued global player, will actually invest $15 billion per year from 2013. So the United States is at a risk of being left behind by China, and Europe is far behind. So this is a very interesting development, a new ecosystem. Chinese operators who sit on a lot of cash, on huge profit margins, are actually first. The first time the Chinese are first in the telecom sector in terms of new developments and investment. Very interesting. The services that are related to cloud are also increasing. I don't want to go a lot into detail. There are obviously a lot of applications, a lot of services, but what I would like you to take away is that from 2011 we will see an annual CAGR of over 25%, which makes cloud-based services a significant market. We assume it will be over 200 billion US dollars in 2015, of which operator addressable will be something like 170 billion. Very exciting market. What does Ericsson do in this context? And this is also going for some other players. We are not inventing cloud-based services. We are enabling cloud-based services. And we see that in terms of 5 Cs. At the center of everything is the connection. We will provide 24/7 anywhere and cloud acceleration. We will focus on quality and experience, and we're doing that today. The second C is computing. We provide high-performance telco-grade and distributed clouds. This is not IT-grade clouds. This is much higher quality. We also do some creation. We accelerate business growth by offering selected as-a-service applications, but we want to not make this a focus area for Ericsson. The market in terms of developers is too big, to really play a big one company. There are literally tens of thousands of application developers out there who are working on the cloud. Very important for operators, which we support, is the control element. We will enable the control by efficient operations, which means an integrated management of cloud and network. And this is going to help application developers, but it will also help consumers for a great customer experience. And finally, there are some customization elements that we also provide. So we see the cloud world in 5 Cs. And this brings me to the conclusions. In the next 3 to 6 years, from worldwide levels, we see that regulation will continue to squeeze on operator profits in many parts of the world, notably Europe and some parts of South America and Asia. The operator and vendor consolidation will continue. I mean both, operators and vendors. And it will be challenging to bring up mobile broadband revenue in the short term, the core revenue. However, via the cloud, there is a new revenue pool that operators can tackle and other players. LTE, the 4th generation network, will massively accelerate the network society. I clearly see US and Asia in the lead. And Asia meaning mainly South Korea, Hong Kong, and China. You see the revival of quality of experience co-driven by network as a differentiator. This was lost in 3G. We really see it in 4G. Verizon and Sprint and AT&T did a lot of campaigns on network as a differentiator over the past 2 years. We will increasingly see that in other parts of the world. We see finally new business models that will come to play in terms of cloud-driven business models, but we will see also operator co-opetition in many new areas, for example, network sharing, particularly in rural areas. OTT threat will continue, but it can be countered by some strategy that I call extending reach. Again, we can go into this in more detail in a separate workshop. Verticals will not be coming into place overnight. This will require a learning curve from all participants. It's similar to the internet in the 90s. There were lots of hits and misses, but there will be verticals that are generating a lot of consumer benefits and a lot of revenues in the next 3 to 4 years. We will see a strong growth in cloud-based services. And last but not least, customers of Ericsson, the operators, who are really quite crucial to this whole game because they are the owners of the customer data. They are, at the end of the day, still the owners of the customers. They must decide now on a future strategy and differentiation. Will they continue trade for share, or will they streamline, or will they innovate? And the key decision on that highest level will impact a lot of things that they should align further down the line in terms of commercial strategy, in terms of network strategy, in terms of the R&D spend, and so on and so forth. So this is what I see as, let's say, key developments over the next 3 to 6 years. So thank you very much for listening, and I would like to open up for some Q&A.
Absolutely. Tobias, thank you so much. That's very appreciated. I think what we've seen here today is very interesting, insightful from a global perspective and a market perspective. Perhaps I just have a follow-up question myself, and then Camilla perhaps may have a question herself, and then after we'll have a little bit more to present, and we can then have a final Q&A for those participants that are here today. Maybe just rewinding a little bit, I'll make this a one question with 2 parts. I saw one of your earlier slides with smartphone subscriptions constantly increasing. It seems, I think the statistic I saw was somewhere around 57% in the United States. Obviously, smartphone subscriptions, it's a driving factor in the mobile momentum. Any thoughts on why the U.S. is leading in the world? As I understand that slide, they're slightly higher than Europe and obviously other parts of the world. Any thoughts on that one slide? And the second part question, if I can just extend this a little bit, from a consumer perspective, there's one slide where you're talking about GMS Edge, HSPA to LTE. As there's an increase in mobile broadband uptake, can we assume that monetization and commerce naturally follows?
All right. It's a long question. So let's go to part A of your question. Why is the US having much higher smartphone penetration than Europe and the rest of the world? I'd like to make some notes here. I would like to answer this in a differentiated way. The US has much higher penetration at around 58% versus Europe, which has around 30%, because of 2 factors. Pricing of mobile data in smartphones that required to buy a smartphone together with a mobile data price plan. It was basically like selling a car and giving the key to the car to drive it. This, unbelievably, in Europe didn't happen. European operators sold smartphones without price plan requirements. So basically they left the users out with a gimmick that was essentially useless. So this bundling is now happening, and it's effectively also driving the uptake. We see that in Europe. The second part of the difference between US and Europe was, frankly, the levels of subsidies. US had a higher handset subsidy level in the last 3 years than European averages, so they made it, the entry costs for replacing were lower, which had also disadvantages. European operators had a quite low SAC, cost of acquisition, which helped them in their balance sheets or in their P&L, but we are seeing increasing handset subsidies. To the second part of your question, why is the US higher than the rest of the world at 10%, including Europe? This is simply a question of affordability. At a $600 to $700 price tag, even sometimes after subsidies, it's simply not affordable to a lot of the third world. And coming to your second part of the question, will monetization follow in mobile broadband? It's a very good question. In the United States, it is following very clearly. You have an average ARPU of a mobile broadband subscription, both in dongles and in smartphones, of around $30 US. In Europe, it's much more difficult, and in some other parts of the world, because the mobile broadband ARPU for the same product can be as low as $8. So customers are expecting very low prices in parts of Europe. The average of Europe is something like $15, half the price than you pay in the United States. So in the US, the monetization is happening very well. In Europe and in other parts of low core ARPU markets, you need to increase it by more intelligent pricing, selling add-ons, selling a differentiated service experience, positioning LTE as a premium, but also we are adding on cloud-based services and other types of multimedia experiences. We see very much Asia there in the lead. If you look at what some of the South Korean and Hong Kong operators are doing, it's quite mind-boggling what they are bringing to the market with success. So in a nutshell, monetization happens in the US and Asia. In Europe, operators need to become much more clever to make it happen. Hope that answers your question.
Yep.
Well, Tobias, I will have also one question for you. Let's say it's a bit more globally. So we see that the goal is to increase the capacity and the speed of the wireless data network's bandwidth, and because it's becoming a critical factor for the mobile monetization. So what are really the challenges for the LTE, long-term evolution deployment, if it's really the costs, as because all of us want to have now quick internet, speed internet just right now. What is the reality?
Are you asking this question from a, let's say, US-centric point of view, or
you can actually, I think, answer also globally. If you have also statistics for the rest of the world, that will be also, I think, very useful.
I think let's say for the United States there is no issue. It is happening. You got countrywide coverage soon with LTE in the United States, and it's being monetized. And this is already where the core is. You're only going to have countrywide LTE when operators are going to make money with that. And coming to your question, what are the challenges? I see 4 challenges to large-scale LTE deployment, which are all driven by, let's say, operator business cases. One of them is handset prices and trade-off versus cost of acquisition. You need to decrease the entry costs for customers to actually use those networks. So you basically have $800 or $600 handsets, which is too much for a lot of non-American customers. So either you will have a slower adoption, or you need to subsidize those handsets, which will go into your profit and loss account. First challenge, handset prices and SAC. The second challenge is actually the monetization itself. You need to find the right price point, and you need to upsell customers to a decent ARPU, which is, I don't say $30 like in the US, but it should be more than 8, like in many parts of other continents. The third challenge is actually the rural business cases. You may have in most countries urban, suburban, key, parts of the country LTE coverage very soon. The digital divide may still be a challenge in terms of rural versus urban, because simply there is not a business case putting a network somewhere where you don't have paying customers. So the rural LTE business case will continue being a challenge. Network sharing is very big time on the agenda, and we're supporting that at Ericsson. And then kind of the fourth part is a blend of culture and past experience. Operators have to overcome negative 3D monetization experience where they rolled out networks and their revenue expectations weren't hit. Maybe also because they needed to do some new type of marketing, which they didn't. But linking to that, it's a cultural question. The culture of operators must change from a big pipe-centric culture, we do everything ourselves, we control what we provide to our customers, to a much more open culture in terms of collaboration, third-party interaction, innovative business model, revenue share, and so on, to really drive application modernization and having a share of those OTT applications that, Viber, Google, Skype, and so on are already successfully monetized. So it's a mixture of handset prices, rural business cases, good monetization, and open culture to new business models. In fact, I'm sometimes, as the last point, I'm sometimes in private suggesting to CEOs of European operators that they should hire much more from Facebook and Google in their strategy and marketing divisions, because I think this is really what is needed, new blood for innovative thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Tobias. It's really covered, I think, all aspects, and good for summarizing all these 4 challenges that actually meet in our operators, and not only.
Right.
Well, thank you.
So I guess just to wrap things up then, Camilla, obviously today we talked about the broadband uptake. We talked about smartphone uptake. There's a few slides, obviously, that we really centered around cloud. And maybe just to finally wrap things up on cloud. I mean, ever since the emergence of cloud many years ago, from cloud servers, of course, software as a solution, companies such as Salesforce, SAP, and of course now the emergence of many smaller cloud companies, we're seeing obviously the growing importance, growing relevance of cloud, and seeing new business models. We know with cloud, of course, there's many reasons to jump on cloud. Of course, the security, easy availability. You have pay-as-you-go, pay-as-you-scale, of course. No CAPEX, self-service, do-it-yourself, of course. So ultimately, you're freeing up resources if you're a smaller company. Software as a solution lets you focus on focusing on your offering, and of course, focus on your marketing and of course your client relations. So I think a summary point is that with cloud, you're keeping costs down. Data is always getting bigger, and so why not outsource that part of your solution? So this is why I see cloud winning. And if you're a smaller company to mid-sized company, this is ultimately one reason why you should consider cloud solutions. Camilla, I'll wrap it up there. Did you have anything to add, or perhaps we could also have a Q&A?
Yeah, I think we actually covered today a lot of aspects. It was kind of really interesting and worldwide. So we can, I think, open the question panel so that I can activate all our attendees and they feel free to ask any of the questions you have, guys. So let's have a look what we have. I see here the first question. It's from Kevin. If you can get a copy of this slide presentation. I believe so. It's not a problem. So we're going to have also pre-recorded webinar as well available on our pages and on YouTube channels. And at the same time, I think it's also really interested. We can send the presentation itself.
Okay, so I guess then we'll wrap things up. That being said, thanks very much for joining in our webinar today and participating. And again, as we mentioned, we'll forward the presentation over to you, and it will be available on YouTube. Of course, if you have any questions, you can email us here at this email. And we'll also, for those participants that joined us today, we'll be giving you a link for our free Engage Start product, so you can get an insight on a cloud-based software as a solution, which we offer, and also you could test out how you could mobilize your company. So thanks again for joining, everybody. Tobias, thank you again so much for presenting today.
Big thank a lot for everybody, and especially for you, Tobias, to find the time for us. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Cheers.
So have a good day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.